I want to go a little more into channels and meridians because this kind of language relates to this study of marma. And meridians are really in Chinese medicine. And here's a picture of the lung meridian. They're pathways. Meridians are pathways where the vital energy or qi is claimed to flow. And people mean different things when they say chi. Some people mean it in a spiritual way. I'm going to explain what I think is a kind of more biomedical approach to that. And then these acupuncture points or acupressure points or marma points or whatever are kind of on these pathways. So Chinese medicine has 12 meridians associated with specific organs. Ayurveda uses language that's similar to meridians. They're called channels, although we don't talk about how marma is located on a channel itself. But the Sanskrit word for channel is called nadi. And a nadi is a little srota. A srota is also a word for channel, or srota is really a word for like river. And you can think of nadis are to srotas the way a stream is to a river. So a stream is a little river and a nadi is a little srotas or a little srotamsi. So, all right, what do we mean? What's a sort of biomedical interpretation of the word energy, chi, or prana that's flowing through these channels? And what is a channel anyway, right? So, channels can be physical structures like intestines or blood vessels or nerves. They can be a connection of bones, right? Like a channel from your foot to your hip through your bone, or a series of connecting muscles, etc. Those can be channels. In other cases, the channel is more subtle. We may talk about a channel in Ayurveda where if you dissected a cadaver, you would see nothing there. Well, what do we mean then, right? Well, in that case, channel should be interpreted as a relationship between different parts. So there are relationships between your hips and your shoulders, for example. Depending upon the placement of your hips, that's going to determine how your body is going to maintain its equilibrium and stability and balance. So it's going to change where your shoulders are. So your shoulders and your hips are connected. I mean, they're connected by your spine, but they're also connected in many ways. All of your organs are connected too. And so that is those relationships can be called channels in Ayurveda. So channel is a kind of umbrella term, and it can be vague, and sometimes it can be used in a mystical way too. So we just want to make sure that when we're using that word, that we know exactly what it is we're talking about, and can use it practically, and that it's not just assumed that the meaning is understood or that the meaning has been communicated. So again, about energy centers and let's see. A similar question. No, this slide looks a little bit messed up here. Okay, so even for some marma points, as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, there are physical underlying structures like the crossing of two arteries, or joints between bones, etc. But other marma points, there's no physical structure underneath it. And so why is that marma located there? The reason for that location may be a little more mysterious, but it may be experienced, right? Just because we can't explain something doesn't mean that we haven't had an authentic experience there. That's valid. It's maybe subjective, or it even may be shared by many other people, but it's still real, right? And that's important, that even that sometimes we have experiences where we can't just analyze it biochemically. So, yeah. So we need tools and language to describe these experiences and describe these relationships. And sometimes the word energy is used to describe an experience, and sometimes these relationships are, we might use the word channel or meridian to describe those. Anyway, we can study those relationships formally, and that's useful. So, what are some ways? What do we mean sometimes by energy? Energy levels can describe a person's wakefulness, right? So we might call energy, if we describe energy, we might be describing how much fatigue or we have, right? Oh, I have lots of energy, or I have very little energy today. The term energy can be used to discuss metabolism. The flow of energy, well, that could be the movement of blood. Movement of blood is a transfer of energy. Blood carries nutrients and oxygens, which are the raw material of feeling energetic, right? If you have plenty of nutrients, plenty of oxygen, if it can get into your cell and your mitochondria are functioning well, then you're going to have lots of energy and you won't be fatigued. So the movement of blood does involve a transfer of energy. Even a impulse traveling down a nerve is a movement of energy. It's a kind of transfer of cause and effect. My brain tells my arm move, and then my arm does it. Well, there was something I had to get from my brain to my arm to trigger the movement, and that's a transfer or a movement of energy, on some level. A movement of a muscle is a movement of energy. A change in thought can be a change in the quality of the mind, and that's sometimes the word energy is used to describe that, right? If a person's went from feeling very lovey-dovey to feeling angry, this person might say, "Oh, your energy is totally changed," right? And that can be like a new agey to talk that way. But nevertheless, that's a way that people use the word energy. And so it's important to know how people are using that word. Energetic healing, people use that word too. Oh, I had this energetic healing. It was a total energetic healing, etc. So what does that mean? Well, it could mean a spiritual shift. It could in your beliefs that has provided stress relief. Like, oh yeah, I just had this newfound ability to feel gratitude, and that has just provided lots of relief for me. A person might say, oh, I had an energetic healing, and that's what they might be referring to. A change in how you feel might be considered an energetic healing. It could also, in Ayurveda, refer to balancing the gunas. Right? Like, oh, my cold quality is no longer out of balance. And so it's a change in my energy, right? In religious use, an energetic healing can also mean a supernatural or spiritual healing. As in, the Bible talks about all these... when Jesus walked the earth, that there were people who would like touch his cloak and be healed of blindness, or they were paralyzed and then they could stand up. And there's all of these, around the world, there's all this different cultures that attest to spiritual or supernatural healings as well. Just by sheer number, we have to assume that that's happening, that the miracles do happen. And so those can be sometimes called energetic healings too, but maybe that's more specific to call those spiritual healings, or even supernatural healings, or miraculous healings. So, I know we're talking about Marma in this lecture, but these are some of the terms and vocabulary that often get referenced when people are talking about Marma. And so it's important that we just understand what people mean and really map this out. So I talked earlier how prana or chi can get stuck in a Marma point, and how the smooth flow of chi or prana is a desirable thing, right? Because when things are flowing smoothly, the energy is moving without obstruction. So again, like this is an umbrella term to describe a range of phenomena. Let's talk about some actual examples of that. So the flow of chi or prana can be obstructed by a tense muscle, right? If my muscle's all tense, then things are not flowing and moving, right? Even blood is not flowing. Anything that obstructs the flow of blood. If you have a huge inflammation or swelling somewhere, that's going to disrupt flow of blood. Or even if your posture is bad, it's going to obstruct flow of circulation in your body, and that could cause a buildup of chi or prana or blood in one area and a deficiency in another area. Something that causes mental tension can block your flow of thoughts, and something that disrupts a nerve impulse in your body, etc. Those are all things that can disrupt the quote flow. And again, that word flow is a really umbrella term. Yeah. Well, because there's a lot of spirituality and philosophy involved in these marma points, even, and I don't want to limit that to philosophy of India or even in China. When you pray in the West, you put your hands together and you're touching different points there. There are all kinds of different ways that people use their body and various spiritual traditions in order to pray. When you in order to achieve different spiritual effects. So in the West, when you pray, you kind of put your hands on your heart area and you bring your attention to that area. That's almost it's kind of like marma therapy, pressing on your heart. And in Indian spirituality, you might focus on the crown chakra as your path towards spiritual transformation or bliss. And so, in the West, the bliss may be more heart related. In Indian, more crown chakra related, or different lineages. And in Indian spirituality, may use different chakras to access spiritual. Anyway, there's just a range of possibilities there, and so using some of these points because it has a psychological effect. You really want to know the philosophy behind it, so that you just know what effects you're getting. Yeah. A new practitioner can innocently use the crown chakra point if they hear, oh, the crown chakra is associated with spiritual bliss. Well, I'm going to press the marma point there because I have a client that's really unhappy and I want my client to be happy, right? So then they'll say, oh yeah, we'll press this crown chakra point every day. But if that client is a vata deranged client, right? Or if that client is constantly kind of vacating their body or dissociates really easily, stimulation of the crown chakra would aggravate that tendency, right? Because the crown chakra is a point that, kind of encourages transcendence. And so if you're a vata aggravated person, you just may not want to press that point, and it may not be blissful for you, but for someone else, it may be blissful. And some people or some traditions see the whole body or all of the chakras operating together as the path towards spiritual bliss. Anyway, we need to know what's going on there if we're going to use some of these more spiritually related points.